I would say fail fast, move fast, and don't reinvent the wheel, meaning that if there is something that's been done and you can use, right, especially for engineering products, use APIs, use things off the shelf. Your initial goal should be to actually prove that this technology is possible or the product is possible. So get that MVP out, get it in the hands of people and have them use it. Sometimes all the planning in the world won't do you any good unless you actually take that first step and take action. And it's not going to be perfect the first time around, right? There's going to be a lot of holes, bugs, gaps in whatever you do, but you own it, right? Like you actually built something, you delivered it. That is the most important thing. So whatever you decide to pursue, build it out. Like make sure that you're able to figure out the fastest way to get it out there to prove your hypothesis or prove your assumptions.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as a founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Krish Ramineni, and it's as close as I'm going to get to pronouncing the name right, but hopefully it wasn't too far off. But so Krish, in his own words, had a pretty normal or typical high school and college journey. In college, originally intended to go into medicine, and then over the summer, I was doing things with a college friends, including building an app where students could check on events on the campus. Kind of took him in a different direction for what he was going to study, and switched over to getting an engineering degree. And then did along that part of the journey in college, did some software app company internships. Worked for Microsoft after graduation. Planning to go to grad school, met up with a friend at MIT, started working on some software, and instead of going to grad school, moved back to California, worked on some different iterations of the current company, which is Firefly AI. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Krish.
Thanks, Devin. Wow, you've covered the full story so far. That's awesome. And you got the name pronunciation just right. So
damn, it doesn't happen very often, so I always take that as a win whenever I can get it. So well, with that, I took a much longer journey and condensed into the 30-second version. So let's unpack that a bit. So, how did your journey get started going off to college to study medicine?
Yeah. So all throughout high school, I was pretty academic, did a lot of almost everything from math to engineering to sciences, all the STEM stuff. So I was almost thinking all the way through 12th grade of my first year of college that I would go into medicine because, hey, I do well in bio and chem and all the sciences, so might as well go into that. And it never occurred to me that I would be thinking about engineering, let alone business, right? So that was a rapid shift, but I realized during my first year that while I enjoyed the sciences, I was, more passionate about building things that is going to have impact on other people's lives. And I think being a doctor is an incredibly noble profession, takes a lot of time and effort. But I just wanted to build stuff that people could use and change lives that way. So that was the common ground between both those professions. And after my first year of college, while I was kind of figuring out my career and what I wanted to do, freshman year, usually it's hard to get an internship right after your freshman year of college. So my friend and I from high school decided to start our own thing and build an application, which turned into this events thing for campuses. So across different college campuses, people could meet up, they could do events, they could see what's going on around campus. And this was before like Facebook events and all these products got unified into one product. So it was a very exciting time. We launched on several hundred campuses over the summer, thousands of users. And it was just a great experience, just building things, building a team, writing our first lines of code. Learning
I may have missed it. What was kind of the genesis? In other words, that you built the app and you're checking out campus events. What made you? Because at that point you were still, I think, in rewinding this a bit and filling in the blanks, but you were still going into medicine, and this was just kind of a summer fun, at a whim, figuring
Yeah.
it out, trying it out, but kind of what was the motivation? Was just, hey, let's see if we can build something. We have some spare time, or kind of what was the genesis that kind of put you on the different trajectory?
Yeah. So I think it was my spring semester where I had decided at that point in time I wasn't going to do medicine. I was interning or co-oping for a venture capital firm. So I thought I was going to go on the VC investment side. And so that was the initial thought process. And then I said, oh, why can't I be an operator? I probably find more joy in building stuff. And so that summer, there was no real end goal in mind at that point in time, other than, hey, we didn't get our standard internships. We have a lot of free time on our hands. Why don't we do this? And we were all back in Pleasanton, California, where we grew up. And we got a few friends together. And it started out something like a fun pastime. It didn't even feel like work, right? It's like, starting a club in school, that's what it felt like when we were starting that. And by the end of the summer, we were a team of like 6 or 7 people on several campuses. And we worked on it even afterwards while we were in school. Obviously, we sunsetted it after school got busy. But that was the genesis, right? Like that was the turning point where I said, wow, I don't need to go into finance or invest in banking or venture capital just because I'm not doing medicine. I could do, I could learn more about engineering. I can actually apply myself. And this is more fun. Like the difficulty of engineering is is always there. That's the hesitation for a lot of people, but it didn't feel difficult when you're learning to build stuff, right? Like if someone sat you down in a class and tells you like, okay, this is a compiler, this is how you're supposed to write this stuff, that gets boring. But whereas I need to solve this problem, and the best way to do it is this way, and you look it up, you Google it, you Stack Overflow it, and you just hack your way through. That's probably one of the most fun and exciting ways to learn how to code and learn how to build stuff. So my desire to learn to code or my desire to build things came from necessity to actually make something come to life, right? So that was the genesis. And then from there, I said, okay, let me take this more seriously. And I ended up applying to tech firms and ended up finding a similar role, which was a product manager that did everything I did that summer, right? Where we put stuff together, we build teams, we create specs. We're doing both business as well as engineering decisions. And that was the year that Workday where I interned, and I'm very grateful for them. They had just started their product management course or their internship. And I was one of the first PMs that interned at Workday when it started. And yeah, that was also a turning point where I'm like, wow, this doesn't feel like work. This is fun. And I had a great time my sophomore summer. And then I decided to graduate. I had so much fun. I decided to graduate early and go do full time. So I took like 7 courses a semester, tried to cram stuff as quickly as possible and finish. And I had applied to Microsoft. And then from there, Microsoft went well, got the offer, and decided to be a PM at Microsoft. Was there for about a year, a little longer than a year. And then I got a grad school opportunity at Cambridge in the UK. Always wanted to go to the UK as a kid. But I had a couple months off, right? So from Microsoft to my time going to Cambridge. So that's when I went to Boston to meet a friend that I had worked with on different projects.
Let me just jump in just because I had a question on there. So
yeah,
graduated undergraduate, got your engineering degree. Microsoft, certainly a big company, well known, probably good opportunity. But I get, one, Cambridge sounds like, it's a great school, sounds like a great opportunity. So you're saying, hey, Microsoft will probably be there when I get, back, so to speak. It'll be a fun opportunity, good experience, and also further bolster your resume type of a thing. So sounds like you were all set to go off to Cambridge, and visiting a friend at MIT was just kind of a fun trip along the way on your journey to Cambridge.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, it was, again, a lot of things that have happened in my life were spontaneous. There wasn't like this greater plan. It was more of taking chances. And it was about, exploring opportunities as they came up. And the usual approach is, yeah, why not? Like, it can't hurt. I'm always going to try to learn something new. So it was not like where I had planned every single step of the way. It's usually I have crossroads where I have to make a decision. It's this or that, right? I have a decision, medicine or engineering. And then do I go into a, enterprise company or a consumer company when I was making decisions that way? And then from there, do I go to grad school or do I go do this startup thing? So everything has been just about taking different decisions along the fork. And I usually took the more adventurous one, or the one where the outcome was more unclear, but it ended up being the more fun route. So.
No, I think that makes sense. So, taking the routes, may not always be clear at the front end, but oftentimes present a great opportunity is definitely a great way to take it. So now as you're stopping by and saying, kind of hanging out, seeing MIT, seeing the friend, it's your way to Cambridge, it kind of sounds like Cambridge ended up falling out because you decided to pursue a software application with your friend at MIT rather than going to grad school or going back to Microsoft. So how did that come about, or kind of what was the genesis for how you decided to go down that route?
So we had a few months that summer. I was in Cambridge, Massachusetts, not Cambridge, London, which is funny that I ended up going to one Cambridge over the other. And so I was there spending time. We said, hey, and my current co-founder who was working at that time with me, he was my friend. And so he had just finished school and he had a bunch of free time before his internship opportunities or full-time opportunities started. So we ended up spending time working together for almost 2.5 months, 3 months, working on various ideas. The idea was, or the hypothesis was that, hey, what is something I can relate to at work that is very tedious and how can we automate it? And one of the things I had realized is, wow, I'm having so many meetings. I'm dealing with so many emails. I just wish I had a secretary that could just manage all my conversations like the VPs do and just tell me what I need to focus on, like what's important for me to look at. And that was the genesis. And so the common theme there is a lot of knowledge buried inside conversations, and it's hard to like review every single email, every single message, and every single phone call or meeting. And so we started by building a very simple Chrome extension back then, which what it would do is it would follow me along as I sent emails, as I sent messages on different apps like LinkedIn, like messaging and chat, and email was primarily the main thing. And anytime I promised to do something, he would remember it. If I said, hey, I'll send you the slides next Friday, or hey, we should catch up in 2 weeks. So anytime I committed to doing something, I was always going to forget. It would automatically create a little sticky note to do for me. And that was the inception of Fireflies at that point in time. So this was the starting point. And then we realized that we had to focus because there were just too many different platforms, too many changes. And we said, what if we brought the same technology to meetings? Because at least for emails and messages, you can always go back and review those messages, right? There's an archive or record of it. Whereas for meetings, once I leave that meeting room, everything is forgotten, everything is lost. And if you ask me 2 weeks later what happened in that meeting, I won't know. But if I go back 2 weeks later to my messages, I can at least see the past conversation. So we said there's a bigger opportunity with meetings, and we should start focusing on that. And so that's why we said, let's build Fireflies specifically for meetings. It'll be an AI assistant that follows you around just like a secretary. It'll start transcribing all your meetings. It'll take notes, and even some of the action items and things that like we had initially built in the earlier Chrome extension, we applied that to Fireflies, and we're able to like detect, hey, this is a task, this is a note, this is a important question that came up. And so that's the journey of us starting out working on some projects to building the Fireflies as it is today. But again, along the way, at the end of the summer, we had to make a decision. Should we keep doing this or should we go do something else? And so we ended up doing 3-4 pivots before we landed on meetings. And we ended up moving out to San Francisco. So we said, hey, we got to give ourselves at least a year to do this seriously full time. And it was during that 1-year process, right? Really that walk through the desert where we decided it's all or nothing at this point, because we were 6 months in, 7 months in, we realized we're not getting traction on some of the other products we were building. And yeah, we went all in on the meetings thing. That was really our final stretch, final hurrah. And that luckily after, a year of building, iterating, beta testing, going live, seeing the technology actually work, because no one had really done it at that point in time. Yeah, so that was really the changing point then.
No, and I think that that definitely makes sense, and I would agree that as with the most startups, sounds like you guys weren't far from the exception. You're always going to pivot and adjust. You have kind of that kernel of an idea, and now you're having to figure out where does it fit in the marketplace, who are my customers, how is that all going to work out. And it sounds like over several iterations, you came to where you're at today as far as kind of where that fits in. So now, kind of bringing us up to the present with the business. So kind of where's it at? Is it fully launched? Can people use it, download it? Is it in beta? Is it in generation 10? And you've already done a whole bunch of things. Is it a huge company? Is it still a small startup? Or kind of clue us in a little bit as to where it's at today?
Yeah, so we actually launched live in January 2020. So right before the pandemic, right before things went crazy. And we were lucky in a sense that we had launched on all the major video conferencing platforms, and video conferencing took off right afterwards during the pandemic. So we grew with the pandemic, and that was just purely lucky timing. And yeah, since then we've been scaling. Fireflies has been used in hundreds of thousands of organizations, millions of meetings. The team has scaled up as well. We're close to 100 people now as a company. It's been a whirlwind. We raised our seed round at the end of 2019, right before the launch. And then in 2021, May, we announced our Series A funding. Yeah, so it's been a really, really interesting journey to say the least. But yeah, the last 2-3 years has been one of the steepest learning curves I've ever had.
Oh, sounds like it was quite the exciting journey, and far from the end of the journey. And so it sounds like an exciting direction and a lot of opportunities yet to come. So, well, with that, now as we've kind of reached the present day of your journey, it's always a great time to jump to the 2 questions I always ask at the end of each episode. So the first question I always ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What did you learn from it?
Yeah, I've said this a few times, but I think there's a general consensus or theme to this. Is along the way, there will be a lot of people that'll give you advice. Some of it is good, some of it is bad, and you take it or you leave it. And when we were young, early 20s founders, there wasn't a lot that we didn't know, but we ended up taking advice out of the wrong context. So what I mean by that is someone who's done something differently, and obviously maybe have built a very successful business, may give you advice from their point of view. And you have to figure out if that applies to what you're working on or not. And so sometimes when we did those pivots, it was because we took advice that wasn't very relevant to our industry or the problem set that we were solving. And it ended up actually setting us back some amount of time. And it wasn't that the advice wasn't bad. It was just, it was not the right sort of advice for us. So that learning for me was that sometimes you have to prove yourself wrong first before you go take advice to try to do something else, because you will always have that regret otherwise if you don't prove yourself right or wrong and get to that, because that's the best learning experience. You can always learn through other people's experience and their wisdom, but it doesn't actually apply unless you do it yourself. So we've learned that it's okay to fail, and it's okay to actually try things and see how it works for you. And the specific business advice I can say in concrete detail is, when we first started out, they said, hey, this sort of stuff doesn't work unless you're in the enterprise. You should go build your product just for call centers and like big, call center sort of space where they're going to be willing to pay lots of money for it. This sort of technology at the end user collaboration level may not really take off. And we realized, like, actually our whole goal for doing this is we want to democratize AI. We want to make this whole AI assistant thing for any knowledge worker, right, that has meetings. And that was a lot of contention. Like there were times when we went and focused on the enterprise, and it was a bunch of waste of time. There were other times where we actually built product where other people were using it. I think there's incredible value in going after the enterprise over time, but sometimes you need to learn and iterate quickly, and you need to get whoever is going to be your customer, right? And you don't have that much of a choice. So that was my biggest learning experience, because when you're a first-time founder and you're new, you want to build something that is related to you and that you can relate to that end user. Whereas I don't know what like a enterprise VP in a contact center or a call center is going to think about our product or solution, right? Unless I really put myself in the shoes of that customer persona. So it's always better to build something that you yourself would use and people like you would use, and know that there is a large enough market for those type of people.
No, I think that is definitely, I think there's some mistakes there. And I think that, finding the person that, kind of finding how to take that advice, how to take the feedback in the right context as it's meant, and using it as a critique for, what to improve is a much better outcome than it is to sometimes take it out of context or take it a different direction. And I've talked with several startups, and hey, sometimes you'll take it out of context and you'll say, hey, they're just being critical and they're really trying to help, or they're giving you some feedback and you think it's in one direction when it's really another. So I think that that's some great mistakes to learn, but also they're great or easy mistakes to make, but some great ones to learn from. Second question I always ask is, if you're talking now to someone that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what'd be the one piece of advice you give them?
Yeah, I would say fail fast, move fast, and don't reinvent the wheel. Meaning that if there is something that's been done and you can use, right, especially for engineering products, use APIs, use things off the shelf. Your initial goal should be to actually prove that this technology is possible or the product is possible. So get that MVP out, get it in the hands of people and have them use it. Sometimes all the planning in the world won't do you any good unless you actually take that first step and take action. And it's not going to be perfect the first time around, right? There's going to be a lot of holes, bugs, gaps in whatever you do, but you own it, right? Like you actually built something, you delivered it. That is the most important thing. So whatever you decide to pursue, build it out. Like make sure that you're able to figure out the fastest way to get it out there to prove your hypothesis or prove your assumptions. And then from there, if you think there's an opportunity, then go focus on ruthlessly perfecting that, right? Because if you really believe in that initial prototype, you can then go chip and perfect it. A lot of times people feel like, unless it's perfect, I can never go live. And that gets us into this analysis paralysis where we'll never actually end up getting something live. And this has happened for many big companies too, where they spend years doing R&D and only to realize that it's actually not practical, right? Or possible. So your job is to prove that it can be practical, it can be done, might not be perfect, but once you prove that it can be done, you can always figure out how to perfect it.
I think that's a lot of great pieces of advice and some great takeaways. So, well, with that, as we wrap up, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to download the software, the app, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Yeah, you can check out Fireflies at fireflies.ai. You might have even seen it in some of your meetings. From there, you can sign up. You actually don't even have to install anything to get started. You sign up and then you connect your calendar, and then Fireflies will join your meetings on your Zoom, Google Meet, WebEx, all the major video conferencing platforms, Microsoft Teams, all of them. And yeah, if you want to apply as well for roles, we have our hiring section and open roles on our website. So fireflies.ai is the place to go. And if you want to reach out to me or have questions, you can find me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and also on Instagram. We've finally started that up. So Krish Ramineni at Krish Ramineni, and you'll be able to find me on all those platforms.
Awesome. Well, definitely a lot of great ways to connect and to find out more and to use a great product. So, well, with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners, if you have your own journey to tell and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. Also, as a listener, make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review, because we want to make sure that everyone finds out about all these awesome journeys. Last but not least, if you ever need help with patents, trademarks, or anything else with your startup, your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat. We're always here to help. Thank you again for Krish for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thanks, Devin.